The world can often feel like a room packed with people all striving for success. While some choose the path of integrity, working hard and staying true to their values, others lie, manipulate, and trample over anyone in their way. It's a disheartening reality that it's often the ruthless ones who climb the highest, making us question whether the world is truly rigged in favor of the worst among us. This pattern isn't a mere coincidence, it's a deep-seated feature of human nature, woven into our evolutionary psychology and social structures. Think about a world where resources are scarce and competition is fierce. Those who hesitate, who seek fairness at every turn, often find themselves left behind. Meanwhile, those willing to exploit, deceive, and dominate seem to rise to the top with ease. This harsh reality forces us to confront an uncomfortable question: is morality a weakness in the game of power? The philosophical lens, master versus slave morality. To understand this phenomenon, we can turn to the controversial ideas of the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He saw power not as inherently good or evil, but as an undeniable force of life itself. His concepts of master morality and slave morality provide a powerful framework for explaining why ruthless individuals often rise to dominance while those who prioritize kindness and fairness struggle. Imagine two warriors on a battlefield. The first is strong, decisive, and fearless. He takes what he wants, shapes the world to his will, and doesn't ask for permission. The second is hesitant, waiting for external validation, seeking fairness, and hoping the world will reward his virtue. Which one is more likely to survive? Which one is more likely to rule? Nietzsche argued that morality isn't a universal truth but a product of power struggles throughout history. Master morality is the ethical system of the strong, the rulers, and the conquerors. It is based on values like strength, courage, and ambition. To the masters, good is whatever enhances their ability to dominate, create, and assert their will. They don't seek approval, they define their own worth. They see weakness not as something to be protected, but as something to be overcome. Slave morality, on the other hand, is the moral system of the oppressed, the powerless. Unable to impose their will directly, they create a morality that glorifies qualities like humility, obedience, and self-sacrifice. It teaches that suffering is noble and that power is inherently evil. Nietzsche viewed this as a psychological adaptation, a way for the powerless to survive in a world controlled by the strong. The uncomfortable truth is that slave morality doesn't prevent the rise of the ruthless, it enables it. By condemning ambition and shaming the pursuit of power, it leaves power in the hands of those who don't care about morality at all. While the noble-hearted hesitate, those who embrace master morality take control, and in a world where hesitation equals defeat, the results are predictable. The paradox of ruthlessness and the just world fallacy. The paradox is that while the worst people often find short-term success, their triumphs are rarely sustainable. The very qualities that enable a person to climb to the top can also lead to their spectacular downfall. A leader who rules through fear alone will eventually be consumed by the very forces they once controlled. History is littered with the bodies of tyrants who believed they were invincible until they weren't. So, if power is often seized by the ruthless, does this mean morality and fairness are destined to fail? Not necessarily. To understand why, we must first challenge one of modern society's greatest illusions, the belief that the world is inherently fair. From a young age, we are told a comforting story that good people are rewarded and that justice will always prevail. This narrative is reinforced by fairy tales, religious teachings, and moral philosophies. But as we step into reality, we face a brutal contradiction: the hardest workers aren't always the wealthiest, and the kindest hearts are often the most broken. This disconnect is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. The idea of fairness is, in many ways, a social construct, a narrative designed to maintain order rather than reflect reality. It's a comforting illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. Psychological research has even identified a phenomenon called the just world fallacy, which is our tendency to believe that people get what they deserve. This belief is dangerous because it encourages passivity. If we assume that goodness alone will lead to success, we risk ignoring the realities of competition, strategy, and power. And while we wait for justice, those who don't share our illusions are already moving forward. The Übermensch, a third path. Nietzsche's answer was not to abandon morality or to become mindlessly ruthless. Instead, he pointed to something higher, the Übermensch, or Overman. This is an individual who transcends both weakness and cruelty. The Übermensch is not about brute force or blind domination, but about self-overcoming. The Übermensch refuses to be a victim of circumstances, doesn't accept imposed morality without question, and forges their own destiny. At the core of the Übermensch is the will to power, but unlike a passive morality of submission and guilt, this is a drive to create, to transform, and to impose meaning on a meaningless world. It's not about control over others, but control over oneself. The Übermensch is not ruthless for the sake of cruelty. Their strength comes from within, and they don't rely on deception or oppression because their power is self-generated. This is why the worst people may rise to power, but they will never truly transcend it. The ruthless play a temporary game, climbing through manipulation and force. The Übermensch plays the infinite game, building something greater than themselves. They are creators, not just takers. So, how do we embody this? The answer lies in understanding power not as a weapon, but as a tool. The third path blends strategic thinking with integrity, allowing you to compete without losing your soul. Accept reality, don't expect fairness. The most successful people accept early on that life isn't fair. They don't waste time complaining, they learn the rules of the game and use them to their advantage. This doesn't mean abandoning ethics, it means recognizing that power is neutral. Develop strategic empathy. This means reading people deeply, recognizing their motives and anticipating their moves. It allows you to navigate deception without becoming deceptive yourself. Embrace internal power. The Übermensch develops internal power by embracing discomfort, taking risks, and forging their own path despite opposition. They don't ask for permission, they create opportunities where none exist. Create, don't exploit. There's a fundamental difference between ruthless destruction and controlled ruthlessness. True power is built on creation. When you create value, you become indispensable. Your power is earned, not stolen. The ruthless often rise fast but also fall hard because their power is built on a foundation of exploitation, not creation. Can you succeed in a world that rewards the ruthless? Absolutely, but only if you stop playing by the old rules and start mastering power on your own terms. This brings us to a final question: is power itself evil, or is it simply misunderstood? Conclusion: the art of power without the corruption of the soul. The question we've been circling around is deceptively simple: if the ruthless rise, what chance does integrity have? The answer is neither cynical resignation nor naive idealism, it is strategic transcendence. The harsh truth is that morality, when wielded without strategy, becomes ornamental, a badge of virtue that wins applause from the powerless but rarely shifts the balance of reality. But abandon morality entirely, and you exchange your humanity for temporary gain, building castles on sand. This is the tightrope we must walk, to remain uncorrupted by the worst tendencies of human nature while refusing to be victimized by them. The world will never hand you this balance, you must forge it within yourself. And this forging is not a passive, gentle act, it is the work of fire and pressure. 1. Understanding the game you're in. The first step is to strip away the illusions about the nature of life. It is neither a fairy tale nor a courtroom where justice is guaranteed. Life is an arena, a constant, shifting contest of wills. Nietzsche's distinction between master and slave morality is uncomfortable precisely because it exposes this arena in unvarnished terms. The game has always rewarded the decisive, the bold, and the strategically ruthless. However, knowing this doesn't mean you must become predatory. It means you must learn the rules others are already playing by, so you're not blindsided by their moves. This understanding gives you the ability to act, not in blind reaction, but in conscious mastery. It's the difference between walking into a poker game thinking it's friendly and walking in knowing the stakes, the tells, and the odds. The same people will sit at the table in both scenarios, only in the second are you prepared to win. 2. Power is not the enemy. One of the most destructive beliefs that slave morality implants is the suspicion of power itself. We are told, implicitly or explicitly, that power is inherently corrupting and that the morally pure should avoid it. But this idea cedes the field to those who feel no such hesitation. If good people fear power, only the unscrupulous will wield it, and history will continue to unfold in the same tragic cycle. Power is a neutral force. Like fire, it can warm a home or burn it down. It is not evil to seek it, it is dangerous to misunderstand it. The Übermensch does not reject power out of fear, nor does he pursue it for petty domination, he shapes it as an artist shapes clay. The people who change history for the better do not do so by shrinking from power. They take it, hold it, and direct it with deliberate intent. And that intent is what separates the conqueror from the tyrant, the creator from the destroyer. 3. Strategy without soul loss. It's easy to imagine that the only way to succeed in a ruthless world is to become equally ruthless. That is the trap. Once you become indistinguishable from the predators you oppose, you've lost the very thing you claim to be protecting. The way forward is strategic power, rooted in 3 core practices. Clarity, know exactly what you want and why. Power without direction is chaos, and chaos eventually devours itself. Adaptability, be able to pivot without abandoning your core principles. Rigidity is weakness when circumstances shift. Guardrails, define your non-negotiables. These are the ethical lines you will not cross, no matter the short-term gain. Strategic power is not passive. It does not sit back and hope that the moral arc of the universe will bend toward justice on its own. It shapes events directly, but without sacrificing its center. 4. The cost of naivete. There is a romantic temptation to believe that goodness alone will open doors. This belief is both comforting and dangerous. Comforting because it spares us the discomfort of confrontation. Dangerous because it leaves us blind to the reality that others will weaponize our passivity against us. Naive goodness is a liability in competitive environments. In politics, business, and even personal relationships, those who refuse to see the possibility of malice will be perpetually surprised by it. The Übermensch rejects this naivete, not by becoming cynical, but by integrating both light and shadow. He acknowledges that malice exists, that manipulation is real, and that cruelty is often rewarded in the short term. But he refuses to be controlled by bitterness about it. Instead, he uses awareness as armor. 5. Playing the infinite game. The ruthless tend to play finite games, they seek quick wins, immediate dominance, and visible control. This is why they often rise fast. But the same qualities that propel them upward make them unstable over time. Fear-based leadership breeds rebellion. Manipulation destroys trust. Greed erodes alliances. The Übermensch plays the infinite game. His goal is not just to win today, but to remain unshakable over decades. This means building foundations on value creation, strategic relationships, and internal mastery. Infinite players think in terms of legacy, not just leverage. They ask, will my actions today still strengthen my position in 10 years? This kind of thinking allows you to survive the storms that topple others. 6. Internal power as the ultimate defense. External power, wealth, status, influence, can be seized, stolen, or stripped away. Internal power cannot. Internal power comes from self-mastery, emotional discipline, mental clarity, and a defined personal code. When you possess it, you are far harder to manipulate because your sense of worth is not dependent on external validation. The ruthless often depend on the approval or fear of others to maintain control. Strip that away, and they collapse. The Übermensch is self-sustaining. He could be stripped of titles, money, and position, yet remain powerful because the source of his strength lies within. 7. The courage to be disliked. One of the most underrated forms of power is the ability to stand firm when others withdraw approval. Many remain trapped in slave morality because they fear rejection more than they fear insignificance. The Übermensch understands that you cannot lead if you are enslaved to the opinions of the crowd. Leadership requires the courage to endure being misunderstood, attacked, or vilified. The ruthless often exploit this weakness in others, but when you strip them of their ability to manipulate your need for approval, you become immune to one of their most effective weapons. 8. Redefining victory. If we define victory purely in terms of wealth or visible status, we will always be tempted to imitate the ruthless, because they often excel in these measures, at least for a time. But this is a shallow scoreboard. True victory is holistic. Influence without moral compromise. Power without dependency. Success that survives the test of time. The Übermensch measures success not just by what he gains, but by who he becomes in the process. The ruthless may amass fortunes, but they often pay for them with the currency of peace, trust, and self-respect. The Übermensch seeks both achievement and wholeness. 9. The responsibility of power. With power, true power, comes the responsibility to direct it toward creation, not destruction. The Übermensch is not a detached philosopher sitting on a mountain, he is engaged with the world, shaping it intentionally. He understands that influence is a force multiplier. A small, well-placed action can shift the course of events for generations. This is why he is deliberate, disciplined, and strategic. The ruthless may wield power carelessly, like a child playing with fire. The Übermensch uses it to light torches, not burn bridges. 10. The call to rise. If there is one takeaway from the uncomfortable truths we've explored, it is this: power will always be claimed by someone. If those with integrity refuse to claim it, it will inevitably fall into the hands of the ruthless. The way to break the cycle is not to wait for justice to arrive, but to step into the arena with both strength and vision. Be willing to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Recognize the mechanics of power, the temptations of ruthlessness, and the illusions of fairness. Then, choose deliberately to walk the third path, neither submissive nor predatory, but sovereign. The Übermensch is not a mythic figure to admire from afar. He is the blueprint for what you could become if you dared to shed illusions, master yourself, and take responsibility for your influence in the world.